Thank you for joining us for today's welcome to our Future Focus series. We are excited to have you guys here. Today, we have two guests with us, Stephanie Williams and Michael. Is it Payne or Pine? Should I pronounce it?
Pine.
Pine, thank you. Michael Pine, and they're both from Health West. The pathway that we're talking about today is Health and Human Services. Please note, guests of our Zoom webinar will have view-only capabilities and do not have access to video or audio. Please use the chat feature if you have any questions you'd like to ask of our guests, and I will make sure that we get those answers for you. And this session is going to be recorded. So we are super excited to have you guys here today with us and sharing your stories and sharing about Health West. You know, like I was saying, Health and Human Services is so directly connected, and Health West in our community really does show how those two work together. So Stephanie, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about what you do at Health West and what that looks like.
Sure. And so if I could, I'm going to share my screen with everyone so they can kind of see a little presentation, because I'm more of a visual person. So. All right.
I like it.
You can you should see my screen now, and I'll just make sure to get myself in slideshow mode. Can you see that good? Everything good?
Yes. Yes, I can.
All right.
Wow. That is very creative. I love it.
Thanks. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Williams. I'm the Learning and Development Coordinator at Health West, and I'm just so excited to be able to talk to you today a little bit about what I do. All right, so here's a little bit about me before we dive into my career talk. I grew up in Detroit. I am married with two kids, and then we also have two pets. We have a little kitten, and we have a little bunny who's a Holland Lop. And then some of my hobbies, I like to take photos, go shopping, and then I like playing board games with my family. We are very competitive when it comes to Monopoly and Uno, those kinds of things. And then my favorite restaurant that I have on the slide too is Pierre Marquette restaurant. It's called The Deck. Love it. I just can't wait for summer to come again.
That is a good place.
All right, so a little bit about my work experience. For the last 10 years, I have worked in the Health and Human Services field. I have worked in community outreach for 3 different agencies. So I'm currently at Health West, but then I also worked at Arbor Circle and Girl Scouts. And I will go a little bit into more detail about community outreach in the next slide. But a common thread in the places that I have worked, which is particularly Health and Human Services, is that these are all places that are, in the helping field. So either, a government agency that serves the public, or like Health West, or nonprofit. And so I have been extremely blessed to be able to work in a field where you can help reach others, lift others up, and be of, hope and a resource to others. I received
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask you, I see that you attended Michigan State and Spring Arbor University. In your role with Health West, what is your degree or credential level, and what is that degree in? So if we have students that are interested in getting into the health and human fields, what kind of degree helps them get there?
So at Michigan State University, I majored in communications and I minored in education. And for Spring Arbor, I am currently in my last semester of my Master of Social Work degree. And so, working for the past several years, I just it's just been ongoing education for me. And in this field, you will find that, education and learning is just kind of a lifelong, thing, because there's always new trends, new things developing that that we can share, that we have learned about, to help others. But I will say that one thing about when I did attend Michigan State, as a student, I really wasn't sure, what I wanted to do with my life, but I did know that I definitely liked working with people, and I have always loved, helping people. And so this was just a natural fit for me to go into a field where I get to make a difference and do things that's really meaningful to people.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We have a lot of students that, are not quite sure what direction they want to go in, but they know that they like working with people, or they like helping, or they like being around the medical field, but might not necessarily like the blood and guts aspect of it,
Mhm.
and so it's nice to know that there's other avenues of helping and supporting people in a positive way. So yeah, so continue. I love it.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so I will go into more detail about my current role, which is community outreach. So what does a person in community outreach do? And so most of the job that I do is centers around educating the public about various, health concerns, mental health concerns, substance use prevention, child abuse prevention, anything that's going to help a person thrive and have a better life. And so, this can happen, in a number of ways. So, such as, conducting trainings for the community for either parents who, just need a little bit of extra help, or we do trainings for youth, business groups. We conduct awareness campaigns. And so this may be, where you are passing out, informational item or promo items that has key messaging on it that you want to reach a certain audience. This can also mean conducting a social media campaign where you're also creating messages and creating ads and putting on those platforms about services and different things that people need to be aware of. um, I also create public service announcements. I've been in several videos. I'm not, you know,
You're
um,
famous.
an actress or anything like that, but I do find that, however you can reach a person in multiple creative ways, that's kind of, what's entailed with community outreach. It could also be organizing maybe a rally or a cause, or being a part of a coalition. We have gather groups to go to Lansing to advocate things to our policymakers. So those are just some of the things that's involved in community outreach.
So it seems very creative, and there's never a dull moment. For
It's
sure, you're
never,
doing
and
lots
it's
of
never
different
the
things.
same work every day.
That's good. That's good. All right.
Oh, wrong slide. Hold on here. All right. So this just highlights just a visual of some of the things I've done over the past 2 years. I took a group of students to the National Alcohol Conference. Um, I've coordinated different awareness campaigns at a food bank. So, that picture there is just like a person handing out those items. And then I also help create like a really cool virtual teen room for parents, where they can enter this teen room and they can see everyday items of things that their kids may be using to like hide things that they don't want parents to see, such as vaping devices and things like that. So that, and then we also had the opportunity just to award some of our local law enforcement agencies. And then we also participate in a child abuse prevention campaign where we plant little pinwheels out in April just to remind the public of the happy childhood, because that's what the pinwheel symbol is all about. And so that's just a little visual of some of the work. And then now I will
Awesome.
share with you some of the skills that I believe that I use fairly often in my job. So um, I have to be knowledgeable of all of our computer programs, such as Microsoft Office and Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. I use the Microsoft Outlook for emails daily. There's also virtual meeting platforms like the one we are on today. So just being able to have working knowledge of Zoom and some of those things. We also use several database and tracking systems just so that we can monitor effectiveness. So we do evaluations to make sure that what we are doing is helpful, and we have to have a way to collect all of that feedback. Other things, we have to use our communication skills. So written and verbal communication skills is important. Project management skills, being able to manage projects in a timely manner, being able to engage the community. So community engagement, and then having a knowledge of community resources, what's out there, being able to work collaboratively with other people, and then also fundraising, because a lot of our, in the human service and helping field is very underfunded. So we do a lot of those efforts. And then I would say event planning too, which is like really fun, because that's where you are really out in the community and you're seeing the faces of our friends and neighbors, and so those are some of the key skills.
Yeah, I'm glad you highlighted those skills because we always focus on that with students to know the skills that they need so they can work on those now. And your job seems to be kind of a little bit of jack of all trades, it seems like. I mean, you get to do a little bit of everything. And so some of those skills that students might be building now that they don't know that they're really going to use later, it seems like in your role, you're going to really use them. So I'm glad that you
Definitely.
highlighted that.
Mhm. And so here's a little information about Health West, which is where I work. And Health West is a community mental health agency. However, we really do much more than provide mental health services, because we also provide services in the areas of developmental disabilities, substance use, physical health, and early intervention and prevention. And we also have a clinic where people can stop in and they can get their COVID vaccines. We have a pharmacy now housed in Health West too. And Health West annually serves about 7,000 children and adults with developmental disabilities, mental illnesses, substance use, and we have about 350 or more, I hear that's growing, employees that work in all of these different areas
Wow.
that's kind of listed to the side there. Case management, therapists, crisis response teams. Um, and then I briefly wanted to mention that the mental health workers in particular, according to recruiter.com, this is a really fast growing field. Salaries can expect to range all the way to like $87,000 a year. Um, and then with a demand for it growing, and they estimate that um, it's going to be about 27,000 jobs that's going to need to be filled. And this is all according to recruiter.com.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're seeing that in education as well, as far as making sure we're supporting our students. And so, that's a great resource that Health West is, to be able to partner and know that those services are available in our community. But look at all the list of different roles that there are at Health West. Like I said, if you're in nursing and you're looking for that job, Health Plus has those as well. If you want to be in clinical and working with patients in the mental illness or needing supports, you have those opportunities as well. And then you even had, administration in there, because in finance, it is a business, and those things need to be done as well. So I loved that presentation, and you really covered a lot of what you do and the bases and the skills and everything. So I appreciate that, Stephanie, very much.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, and so Michael, we're going to switch over to you, and
Okay.
you were kind of sharing that you have that background in the clinical side of things. So
Right.
share a little bit about what you do and your journey of getting there as well.
I will do that. Yeah. For the past 20 years, I've worked out here in Muskegon County, and I work for Health West as well. Stephanie and I work in what a lot of the employees call the fun department, because it seems like more fun than some of the other jobs. There's still a lot of hard work, and there's still a lot of challenges, and it can sometimes be emotionally very draining. But it is kind of that outreach side of things. So I'm currently working similar to what Stephanie is doing. My job that I have today is customer service. So I assist people who have Medicaid or no insurance to navigate any concerns, problems, issues. I take complaints from the public if there's any problems that they've had in their interactions with Health West. But a good part of the work that I have been doing is also community outreach and suicide prevention. But to start at the beginning, because I am less young than a whole lot of people here, I started 36 or 37 years ago in Grand Rapids working at Pine Rest Psychiatric Hospital. Well, I'll go back even further. I knew what I wanted to do when I grew up from the time I was very young, 6 or 7 years old. I remember telling my grandmother exactly what I was going to do when I grew up. I went through high school, told people exactly what I was going to do when I grew up, went through college, didn't skip a beat, studied in the field that I wanted to be in, knew exactly what I wanted to do. Got out of college. During college and out of college, I utilized my degree at that time, which was broadcasting. I wanted to be a reporter. I wanted to be an interviewer of people. There weren't a lot of interview things happening back in the day. Now there's 50 million interview shows. And so I did all that. I went through, I did news, I worked on morning shows, and then I did independent radio documentaries. So I worked out of my own home doing independent radio documentaries. And then after a while, that's not very profitable. It certainly wasn't very profitable for me. And in my family, on my mother's side, she had a brother with a developmental disability, my uncle. She had a sister who had a traumatic brain injury at a very young age, so another developmental disability. So I had an aunt and an uncle who had special needs. And then on my father's side, he had a sister who had cerebral palsy and some other developmental disabilities. And so needless to say, my family was kind of steeped in the culture of developmental disabilities. So I grew up with this, and these individuals were kept home. Contrary to what was really happening in the world at that time, quite often you put family members away and you would not see them again. But that wasn't the way it was in my family. They were home, they interacted with us, we were in that mix. And so I was at ease and I was comfortable in that particular environment. And while my hobby, what turned into a college degree, turned into a hobby, was great fun and I enjoyed it, it didn't really pay the bills, and I was comfortable working with people who had mental illness or developmental disability. I didn't have a problem with it. So I applied to work at Pine Rest Psychiatric Hospital, and they hired me. And I've worked for Hope Network, another very large organization here in West Michigan, state of Michigan. I worked with these organizations for quite a while. And so for those who don't know what they want to do, or those who maybe do know what they want to do, I think still when you're young, it's okay. Pursue your paths. Make choices, hopefully informed choices. And then I would also say be comfortable. Things can change. What I enjoyed about the idea of interviewing people and doing documentaries was I wanted to get to know people. I wanted to get to know different cultures. I wanted to understand, why do some people pursue fame. Like, what is that about, right? I just had an interest in people. And I think to some extent that has served me well in this field, right? I try not to act like I have all the answers because I don't. And the other part of it is because I was comfortable with it after about 15 years of working in the field, the state of Michigan offered anybody who had worked for a specific period of time in social work. So now I'm pretty much doing social work. I have a degree that is not a social work degree, which most people are shocked to hear. But the state of Michigan would grandfather people in. They would license you as a social worker if you had worked for a specific period of time. I forget if I had to take a test or what I had to do with the state. I had to apply, and they gave me a social work license. And so I am one of the people who did not study social work in college. That's nearly impossible today, by the way. Okay, so I want
Yes,
to say
it
that out
is.
loud.
I was
You're
going to say,
probably,
yes, it is.
and there's a great benefit to studying social work. I've, needless to say, 15 years, I had a lot of education. And probably even more education has come in the second 15 years plus, because we have just grown by leaps and bounds in terms of helping people with mental illness and addiction and developmental disabilities. Things have changed dramatically. We're a little better. It's still an inexact science, though, and it still is challenging. And so for the bulk of my career, I've actually worked with individuals who had severe and persistent mental illnesses. So we're talking schizophrenia with hallucinations and this type of thing, very severe mental illness. That's been the population that I've worked with the most. And so the work that I have done up until about 9 years ago has been working directly with individuals. And then about 9 years ago, a job came up in the department that I'm in now, and it was going to involve community outreach and education for community members as well as some staff. And I thought, this is for me. And I think it also blended a little bit of what I learned in college in terms of advertising, messaging, marketing, interviewing, communications. All of those things were in there, and that's kind of what the department was about. And now I also had, nearly 30 years of experience at that time. And graciously, our director gave me a job in this department. I remember she called me. We had a long discussion about it. She really would have liked me to have stayed in the role that I was in because they were short-staffed. And I said, I'll do what you want me to do. And I'm willing to stay in the job working directly with people, but I'm probably going to pursue this sort of a job elsewhere. I want to be honest and let you know that. I don't think
Sure.
I was bribing her in any way at all. And she was like, you know what, we're going to give you this job. We'll see. So
Well, I
thankfully,
love,
I'm doing this.
yeah, I was just going to say what I love about what you and Stephanie both have shared is your kind of journeys, and especially yours is, kind of been a full circle. You started out in broadcasting and
Yeah,
you are using those skills as you're talking to people and listening and finding their story. And now you're getting to use that even more in community outreach. So I think that hits on like what Stephanie said, you're never going to stop learning. And we always highlight
right.
that with students because there's not going to be a job out there where you're going to like, oops, okay, I'm done.
You
It's
know,
just
to,
not going to happen.
to that point, I would say this too, right? Sometimes young people may hear, if they may be interested in social work or going into the helping field, or maybe you want to be a nurse or a doctor. We have dentists in our building. There's all kinds of roles out there. Um, you don't want to have a doctor or a dentist who graduates from college and never picks up another book and learns another thing, right? I want my
Right.
dentist to know all the new stuff. I don't want somebody who's 20 years out of college and never learns. It's really an ongoing process of new approaches, new ways to help people, new studies, new things we learn. And so it's not ever been a challenge to me. I've enjoyed it. So if you're somebody who enjoys learning and continuing to learn, and I would say to everybody, regardless of the career path you pick, continue to learn, throughout that. It's going to be better for your brain. You're going to have a better retirement, I think, if
Yeah.
you're always learning, always learning.
Yeah, I do agree that. And I'm interested in knowing from both of you, what classes, because here we might be having middle school, high school students listening in. What classes would you say in high school were beneficial to get you on the path that you're on now? either one of you.
You want me to go, Stephanie? So I think in terms of high school, now again, I'm 60 years old here, so high school was a while ago. I graduated in 1980. Okay, so it's been a while. But I do specifically recall I was very interested in psychiatry. I had a class in, I think, abnormal psych. I don't know if that's offered in high schools today, but in the high school I was in, we had abnormal psych, and there was also another psychiatry class that I took. And while that wasn't necessarily the career that I was going to pursue, I was always interested and fascinated by that. I feel like those things are very, very helpful. I will tell you the other class that I feel was probably the most helpful. When I was a freshman in high school, I quit band after like 3 weeks of the first year in high school, right? I don't know why, but I quit band. Well, I had a certain class that was associated with band, and they didn't have anywhere to put me. So they put me in a class with all seniors, and it was a speech class. So I'm a freshman, brand new to the school with all seniors, and I have to give speeches, right? I think that was very, very helpful because I had to win those people over. It was that or maybe be mocked or who knows what, right?
Yeah,
And
well,
you learn the
like,
skills then.
yeah, I was going to say, like Stephanie said, one of the skills she highlighted was communication. And so I would think in your role, or even in a clinical role, being able to communicate well with people, whether it be written or oral, is going to be really, really important. Um, Stephanie, you talked about some of the skills that, students may need or that you use in your job. If you're in high school right now, what are some skills that you might suggest that students could work on right now that would really help them as they might want to look into going to health and human services?
I would definitely say, as Michael mentioned, maybe like a communication or a speech class. That's always good because that gives you, practice with, interacting with people and expressing, things. I would also say, if there are any opportunities for like business skills classes. So, years ago for me, we actually had to learn how to type, right?
Yep, I remember
And
that.
so, those kind of classes, I think, are really key. Um, I think for this field also, some of your history classes and just learning a little bit about um, how our government works, and how how much of a part that we all play in things that happen within our community. So I think those are some key classes. Um, Definitely your English classes. You're going to be doing presentations in there, and in this world with things are global, and it's the way that we communicate now. You're going to be doing presentations to various either your own coworkers or community members or other businesses that you're engaged with too.
Sure,
I
and
would,
obviously through Zoom.
yeah, right. I would add to that, and I'm not certain how much of this can necessarily be obtained through high school. But what I would also encourage people to do is, and young people, I got to say this first of all, I feel like when we present to young people, it's a breath of fresh air. I feel like around the topics of mental illness and these, I just feel like young people have a much better handle on things. Even though mental health concerns and depression and anxiety, these things are prevalent and they're out there, I also feel like there's less stigma, there's less secrecy about it, hopefully. And so it's very, very encouraging. So I feel like the young people out there today are really going to have a much bigger impact on our community, individuals, our community, and society as a whole. But if you're interested in pursuing this field or any helping field, if you wanted to be a medical doctor, a nurse, or anything like that, I would encourage you to really have a good, firm understanding of self-care, how to take care of yourself, how to be as healthy as you can be yourself, because it is taxing, it is difficult. We do hear difficult stories quite often. The jobs are challenging. People's stories are difficult. We have a somewhat steady diet of uh, less than positive things, and it's hard, just like you would in an emergency room, more intense. I'm not trying to compare, but
Sure.
it's hard to be a medical doc. You have to be strong, I think, mentally, as strong as possible. And I think those self-care ideas, right? Mindfulness practice, exercise, eat right, sleep right, do those things and start those things when you're young. I would say do them regardless of career. But if you're really going to go into a field where you have a relatively steady diet of less than positive things that are coming your way each day, those were a challenge in my first 15 years. Those were an emotional challenge. They impacted my own mental health. And it took me 15 years to kind of wake up to the fact like, wait a minute, how am I going to do this and keep my own mental health in check, right? And 15 years was a long time to wait. So I would encourage people, those self-care needs, eat right, sleep right, exercise, mindfulness practice, these types of things where we feel comfortable in our own skin and relatively healthy, we're going to be much better at helping other people too.
Oh, I'm so glad you shared that because I think of that as we have people in health and human services, especially right now as we're going through a pandemic. You know, we hear about how our healthcare and human services workers are taxed. And so I think that is really, really great advice. I appreciate that. So, okay, think back. You're back in middle school, you're back in high school. Um, what is something that you would tell somebody in middle school or high school, that little nugget of really great advice that I wish I would have known either, you know, in high school or wish I would have known in college that really would be helpful for somebody coming through this little nugget of wisdom? Stephanie, we'll have you go first.
Um, I guess I would really, really wish I would have known that it was kind of okay to not, have everything all figured out as a young person, because you are at a place where there's so much more life and so much more experiences, that your brain isn't even fully developed at high school age. It's not being developed now until like the middle 20s. So that it's okay for students to kind of, just explore different things that they may be interested in. And I would encourage that. I think that this series that you are putting on, it offers a great opportunity for kids to kind of learn about things, um, so that they can start to, get some ideas of where they may see themselves.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And Michael, what about you?
There's, boy, there's so much. I think, especially, I think these apply probably for every human being out there. I would encourage everybody with this, but if you're going into the helping field where you're going to be serving other individuals, and specifically if you're going to work in human service, mental health, the field that I'm working in and Stephanie is working in, I think my biggest advice, and I don't know where young people are at when it comes to cultural differences. I know racism is out there. There's differences in cultures. It can be a stumbling block. Some of us are maybe better at understanding other cultures. But I would work to understand that the culture or the community that you are raised in isn't the only one out there in the world. Go
Mm,
out, experience other cultures in our own country. If you get the opportunity to travel when you're younger, travel, immerse yourself in some other culture that is not yours, where you are the minority. Try to put yourself into those things. And I think that it helps you to at least better understand that if nothing else, we are different and those differences are okay. With the problem that we see sometimes is young people can come out of college and want to start into this field, and they have an idea of where this person should be that they're helping. And that
mm,
person may not have that same idea in their head because it's culturally different from theirs. theirs. It's like you were raised this way in the suburbs, in this situation, you went to church every Sunday, blah, blah. That may not be where this person is at. And that also has to be okay. And sometimes that can be quite challenging. And it's not just about the difference between races. Quite often when we talk about, different cultures, immediately our mind goes to race, and we should think about those things, and we should recognize our differences and work to better understand each other. It'll get you farther if you're working in the human service field to truly make yourself uncomfortable by putting yourself into situations so you can better understand cultures. But there's also the culture of poverty. There's the culture of mental illness. There's the culture, there's many different things that are out there that if you weren't raised in a culture of poverty and now you're coming into the helping field, how exactly is it that you are helping? What are the signals you're sending? What are those kind of biases that you have that might make that person feel uncomfortable when you think you're actually helping them? So it's a challenging thing, but I would say learn about other cultures, immerse yourself in other cultures, and work to be at least as open-minded as you can be about who comes through that door. We assist people. In my 36 years, I've worked with people who are obviously individuals who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. We have coworkers who are obviously lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. But I've worked with people who have murdered people. I've worked with individuals who have been in prison for various other horrible crimes. There are things where you go, I don't know if I like this person, right? When you first hear somebody's going to be assigned to your caseload, or maybe they're going to come to you for treatment, and you have this visceral reaction. This person murdered their girlfriend. I don't like this person right now. And then maybe you get to meet that person and actually start to work with them and get a different understanding of the story. I'm not suggesting that you have to be okay with murder. I'm suggesting you will hear all kinds of things. And if you're truly here to help, you're here to help everybody. And there are many different cultures out there that you probably are completely unaware of. And so you gotta position yourself to be open to those things.
Yeah, I think that's important to know, because you want to be able to serve the population, whatever that population is going to be, like you said, coming through your door, and in a way that's empathetic and sympathetic and real, because that's just the nature. You're helping people, and they want to know that you're there to help them. So thank you guys so much. We're winding down our time for our future focus series. I just appreciate you both sharing your roles, your journeys, and about the career in general of health and human services. It is a growing field, and we do need really good people in that field to help people of our community. So I appreciate you both taking the time today. I will have you guys stay on as I exit with everybody else. So thank you everyone for joining us for our future focus series, and join us again next week.